YouTubes, here we are again. So I've got the VE 40 car. It needs a clutch. It's cooked. So it's been pretty bad for a long time, and I've had the clutch sitting here for a while, but you know, getting the time is a bit of a pain. It's a pretty involved job, and I'm just getting started in it, and just sort of trying to search for videos. I wasn't going to bother doing a video on this because it's sort of a bit difficult, but I just wanted to see if I could find something that showed how and where the bolts were on the bell housing, but there's nothing out there real comprehensive. So let's get into it. I'll show you what's going on and how to get the gearbox and everything out, and how to swap the clutch over and the eccentric bearing that goes along with each kit. So we're actually putting a heavier duty sports type clutch in it, which requires a few extra parts. Alrighty, I'll give you a run through. See ya. Alright, so we've got a blue steel clutch. Some people argue that they're not the best, but I've actually used a couple of them and they've been pretty good. So this is a heavy duty clutch kit, and in this box here, there's two boxes. We have our lining bolts. Alright, because we've got a new flywheel to go on. So the VE stock uses a dual mass flywheel, so we're going to change that to a single mass flywheel. Alright, comes with new bolts because I think they're torque to yield bolts. Alright, and then in this box is our clutch kit. We have our pressure plate. This is a clutch aligning tool. I'll show you how to use that a bit later on. In this box, your friction plate, okay, and our new eccentric bearing, thrust bearing, whatever you want to call it. Alright, this is an upgraded part because the spring rates of the friction plate and everything are higher. Okay, so because they're higher spring rates, which gives better grip, we need to upgrade this because the factory one's not that good, but it's best to upgrade it, well, replace it regardless whenever you change it, because there's quite a lot of tension goes on this bearing, and that's how the clutch operates. So it uses hydraulic fluid in through here from the master, and that compresses the flywheel, the plates to disengage and engage the clutch. Alrighty, so there's not too many components in it. It's just a fiddly pain in the butt, especially when you're trying to work on jacks. Alright, so I've sort of got started. I've got it on jacks. I've got jack stands under it, but not set up because I want that extra bit of height to make it a bit easier for me. So obviously safety first. If you had car ramps or something, you can do it on car ramps, but the higher it is, the easier it is to get the box out, because the bell housing's quite large. Okay, so as you can see on the other side, that jack doesn't go as high, so that one's got a jack stand under it, and I'll probably have to end up taking this jack out to support my my gearbox when I'm pulling it out. So I typically just lay it on my chest, but it's been a little while and I'm a bit unfit. So anyway, we've got a creeper. Okay, so looking under the car now, this is our sump of the motor. Okay, this is the bell housing. So the clutch assembly and the flywheel is all within this part here. All right, and then this is actually our gearbox here. So we have lots of things in the way. You've got this cross member here, the exhaust. I don't know if that needs to come off yet or not. I'll surely let you know. I don't like taking anything off that I don't need to. You know, you start separating exhaust and you can end up with leaks if you don't replace the flange gaskets and so on and so forth. So I'm not big on taking everything off. It looks like there's probably enough room to get it through. So this cross member, it's got the rubberized mount for the rear gearbox mount. Okay, as far as holding the gearbox up, the only thing that holds the gearbox up is this mount and where it bolts on up here. Okay, these bolts here are a double hex bolt you can use, and they're not overly tight. So I've actually been using an 11mm double hex socket. All right, that fits over there. Oh, that's a 10. Fits on there perfectly. All right, this is the hardest part really, is accessing the top bolts. All right, I'm gonna try and get you up here so you can see this bolt up here. All right, there's one there. There's another one in the middle at the top. So that's going to be our biggest drama. This one here, I do all the top ones first, okay, because the bottom ones are easily accessible. And, you know, obviously do the harder bits first. You don't want the gearbox to shift and bind up. It shouldn't, because it's got dowels to locate it. But if the gearbox does shift and you're trying to get the top ones out after you've got all the bottom ones out, you're going to have issues. All right, so this is the part where we need to bleed later on, and that feeds fluid into the concentric slave, which is the slave and the bearing together. There's a pipe up here, all right, it should clip into a little retainer there, okay, but that clips out. And then I'm not sure if this separates here or not, or if I just undo it at the back. The only thing I found was a video on a dodgy video on a VZ, so I may be able to leave all this here, because this remains. This is all the existing. I might be able to pull this clip up. Unfortunately, it's really hard to try and get in there. But basically, this clip here. Okay, see this little dot, basically, you can see on either side. That's the bottom of a spring clip. Okay, so you can get a screwdriver up the top here, in from the back, and lift it up, and then this part here comes out. Okay, so it will leak fluid. It's the same as brake fluid, clutch fluid. It will leak, so don't lay under it while you're doing it. But this way, at least all that can stay. All right, so because that runs into, obviously that's got to pressurize the fluid that goes into the eccentric bearing. So yeah, I'll pop this off, pop this out, and I've got one more bolt at the top I need to try and get out. Obviously I can't get around anywhere. So the other thing is, we've got a few things like, this is the harness for the O2 sensor. All right, it was broken already. Actually, it looks like it might just slip in there, so anyway, we'll look at that later on. Yeah, that just slips on there. Okay, so it's just come off. Anyway, there's that. Up here is the linkages. All right, so this bit here, pops up, and it's connected to the pin, and the pin slides out. Okay, so might need a screwdriver or something to try and pry it up. Obviously it's supposed to be fairly tight, because I don't want it popping out any other time. So there's that one, okay, and then I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but in the middle up here, this is the main linkage for the shifter. All right, we need to, there's a pin in that. I might have to show you that once I get it out, because there's just not much room. I'm guessing this is a speed sensor or something, but there's nothing plugged into it, which is odd, because everything works in this car. The only thing I found were connected was this, and at this point I don't know what it is. I'll put a note on the video as we're talking. So that might be a speed sensor, it might be a reverse switch, but there should be a reverse switch and a speed sensor at least on the gearbox. So reverse switch, knowing that the gearbox is in reverse, which obviously turns the reversing lights on and all that sort of thing. But I can't feel another plug anywhere above the car, which is weird. Like this harness here is the one that goes from the O2 sensor over the top, and we've got this other O2 sensor for the right bank. This plug here is where that sensor plugs into, and then this comes up back up to the other O2 sensor. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'll find out soon enough when I start pulling it down. So once again, this side here, we've got these bolts. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get you up there, but there's a cover plate on the back. It doesn't necessarily have to come off. It's got one 10mm bolt that holds it in. Okay, this bolt here, this spot here, is a reverse bolt, so it bolts back into the bell housing. So that one needs to come out. All the other bolts go forward. So there's on this side at the top here, that was a reverse one. So up here where my finger is, which is pretty difficult to see and do, there's a bolt here. There's another bolt about 4 inches in, 100mm in, which I've got that one out. But then there's another one in the middle, which I'm struggling to reach at the moment. So when I finally get that, I'll give you any pointers I can. But if you disconnect or unplug this harness out of the way, or just like get it off the gearbox, which you have to do anyway, you can get it out of the way far enough to be able to get the socket and that on. One thing I did notice is that my 1/2-inch drive, I couldn't get in there, it's just way too big, so I had to use a 3/8-inch drive with an 11mm socket, and I used a deep socket, all right, to get up on those ones. It because of the ribs in the bell housing. So yeah, you've got these ribs. All right, I couldn't get the angle to get the shallow socket on there and be able to turn it. It was hitting the rib. The ratchet was hitting the rib. So with a deep socket, I was able to get it. All right, these aren't real tight. In that spot up there, I'm able to do it by hand and just basically using my fingertips, because you can't really reach anything else up there. So that's probably pretty much all I can really show you right now. These bolts here, there's 5 there. They're all easy to get to. So it's just the ones at the top, which are the difficult ones. The only other thing I need to do is, that's a coupling there from the output shaft to the tail shaft. Okay, so I'll need to undo that. In order to undo that, I need to get rid of this cross brace, the bell housing support. All right, so I'll pull this out of the way and then undo the coupling. If you can, well, I'm assuming, because typically you can slide out the output shaft, but you're going to end up with oil everywhere. Okay, so when you go to move this gearbox out, it's going to end up tipping, and all the oil will spill out if you do take that off. All right, the output shaft. So if you can, undo it, leave the tail shaft section, and then leave the input shaft in the gearbox. All right, anyway, I'll get a few things done. These bolts here look like they're probably going to be a 14. I can tell you that while I'm sitting here. It's a 14. Oh no, they're way fucking bigger. So it's a 14 on the hex. All right, on this torque style. So depending on what you can get to, whether you can undo the coupling from the output shaft, might even be better. But you need to get a spanner on the back, which is probably a 17. So that bad boy there, there's 3 of them. So I need to try and get onto the back of that. These sorts of jobs are easier if you can get the back of the car up too, so you can actually spin it. But I don't have that luxury. Okay, so I've got the cross member off. I've got the gearbox supported on a jack. And then I've got the tail shaft unbolted and slipped back. We've got the linkages undone, which are up there, a bit hard to see. So from here, and I pulled the last bolt out of the bell housing. So there's no bolts left in the bell housing. So I've still got the exhaust in, I've still got the tail shaft in. The only thing I'm pulling out is the gearbox, okay, and the bell housing. So the hope is that now I can lower this jack and slip it out. I'm not going to leave the phone under here because I don't want it to get smashed. But yeah, basically this is the fiddly part. This gearbox is actually pretty heavy, so I'm not going to try and lay it under it and put myself in harm's way. So I should be able to lower it and slip it back off the input shaft, and then it'll come down and I can try and roll it back out from underneath the car. I might end up seeing if I can get it onto this this garage floor creeper. Alright, but that's pretty much where we're at. So thus far, getting that top bolt on the bell housing was fiddly, but if you undo your master cylinder, slave cylinder, pull that out of the way, then the hose moves and it gives actually quite a decent bit of room up there to get your hands up there. So yeah, still fiddly, still have to go by braille, but it's not impossible. Alrighty, I'll try and get this box out. Okay, so we've got the gearbox out. This is the thrust bearing, held in by three bolts. I'll tell you what they are. They're 12mm head bolt. All right, this one here looks like a 10. Okay, it's a 10mm head bolt here. So this part here is where the, I don't know if I can get it. I don't want to pull the gearbox all the way out. It's not much point. So this part here is where the slave bolt's on. Okay, and that feeds in through here into the bearing. Okay, so it is on the instructions. Hang on. Okay, on the instructions it does say to put thread lock, so Loctite or the likes, onto all of these bolts when reassembling. All right, you can hear that thrust bearing's crook. All right, so it definitely needed to be replaced. Now I don't want to pull this whole thing out because there's not much point in pulling it out from underneath the car and making any more trouble than I've already got. So I will. I'll move my tools and I'll get a couple of blocks of timber and I'll roll it. If I roll it, it's going to leak all the transmission fluid out. We don't want to do that. Gearbox oil. So, but anyway, I want to get it out of the way so I can do my clutch. So this is the old clutch. It's held on by these bolts around here, which look like they're probably going to be a 10mm. All right. So we'll undo those, take this off, and then that'll expose the flywheel. So then we'll take the flywheel off and swap it out. Okay, as I start to unbolt this, so it's 8mm socket onto these. Okay, but see how there's movement there? So you can see the ring gear and the actual flywheel's not moving here. So this is a dual mass flywheel, so it's rubber mounted. The center is rubber mounted to the outside, the inside. All right, that there is supposed to give some cushion, but they go, and as you can see, here's like a significant flex in it. So we're replacing it for what's called a single mass flywheel, which is just a standard flywheel. These bolts are pretty tight. But I'm only using a 3/8 inch. Anyway, I'm gonna have to put this phone down so I can get this done. Alright, but yeah, I just thought I'd show you that. Okay, so the clutch assembly's off. This is our flywheel, our dual mass flywheel. You see the center moves. So we're going to take out these in hex bolts. I'd be guessing they're probably 8mm. I'm going to tell you in 2 secs. And yes, they are an 8mm. All right, I've got this. This set's an impact set. Now, some flywheels are interference flits, and others are not. So, just be careful when you take a flywheel off. Sometimes they'll want to pop off. All right, so leave one bolt in. So just go around and crack them, and then leave at least one bolt in while you're mucking around. If it comes loose, okay, you know you're all good. If it doesn't come loose, sometimes you might have to belt around the side of it, or give it a good hit in the middle with a drift to be able to release it. But obviously, when you're working under a car, it's pretty dangerous because this is a very heavy part. All right, I'm going to rip this off. Check the compressor. Okay, flywheel's off. So yes, this is not an interference fit. You can see this, everything's Loctited on. So we'll replace that with Loctite. This is the rear main seal. Okay, if you're worried about it, you replace that. Now, if this car's only got 70-odd thousand Ks on it, so I'm not going to bother replacing the rear main seal. If it had, 150,000 Ks on it, I definitely recommend replacing the rear main seal. So this just pops out. It's fiddly to get out. It's a real pain in the ass. Basically, you can pick this out and then you can press the new seal in there. And yeah, it's definitely well worth your while to do. But as I said, this has got very little Ks on it, so I'm not going to bother with this one. So I'll show you the difference between the clutches. Okay, I've got the flywheels here side by side. You can see this is a nice fresh machine flywheel. One thing you need to do here, there is a bit of residue on here, a bit of oil. Obviously I'm making it all dirty, but use a brake and parts cleaner, just like you would if they were brand new disc brakes. So clean all this up, because you don't want that that oil to get into your friction material, and then that can cause you all sorts of dramas with slippage and that sort of thing. And the whole point is, the old one was toast, and it was slipping really bad, so we need to fix that. All right, so you can see all these heat marks. It's actually grooved quite heavily. It's probably the worst clutch I've seen. So this is the friction plate. You can see the friction materials, there's not much left. It's almost down to the rivets. Okay, but because this has been cooked, it's really fragile and it just flakes off. Okay, so it just basically rips it apart. On the friction plates, there is a note. So this one says FW side, which is the flywheel side. Okay, so this one goes face down like that. With this one, it says on this side, flywheel side. Okay, so this one's going to go face down like that. Alright, so basically when we get it in the car, we'll have the flywheel will be bolted back onto the crank on the back of the motor. We'll put this friction plate in, and we'll put this plate in. And it's got dowels that line it up. if I lined it up to the right spots. You see there, the dowel goes in the little hole. Then you've got bolt holes. All right, so there's 6 bolts. It comes with new bolts. Use the new bolts. Get rid of the old stuff. All right, and then we've got a hole in here. Now, as you can see, I move around and that looks like it moves, okay? What happens is you get a clutch aligning tool that comes with it. And that spigot there goes into the back of the crank. And this lines up through the spleen on here to be able to get it square and lined up. Once it's in and square and lined up, then we can tension this pressure plate down. All right, in the meantime, that sits in there, and then once this is all lined up and torqued down, then you can slip that out, and then that's where you reinsert your gearbox. All right, so there's information here on the details of how to install this concentric slave cylinder. So I did see it was 30 Newton meters is the torque spec for the 3 bolts that hold the slave in. We'll get into that now. Okay, I've got 1 bolt in there. It's not torqued down or anything. It's just to get it up and get it lined up. All right, so now I'm going to put thread locker on the rest of them. So Loctite 243 is what's recommended by the manufacturer, so we're definitely going to use it. And you only really need to put a drop on one side. As you can appreciate, when you go to put it in, it's going to rotate. This flywheel has uneven bolt spacing and only has one direction that you can actually bolt it in, so just take note and be cautious. So I haven't cleaned the flywheel yet. We'll wait until we're ready to go because my hands are filthy, and at least this way everything will be torqued down and then it'll be cleaned. Okay, so we're ready to do the friction plate. So I've just got some brake and clutch cleaner. It's just a matter of spraying pretty well all over the surface. Because I'm spraying up, obviously it's a good idea to wear safety glasses, which I'm actually wearing for once. And I'll just wipe all that shit off. Alright, this stuff dries pretty quick. I'm going to give it a good thorough wiping, and then after that I'm going to spray it again. I'm going to let it dry off, and then I'm going to put the friction plate up. Right, you can see everything running off there. See how quickly it's drying? Okay. So it'll only take a second, and then I'll put the friction plate up. Okay, so it's all dried off. We've got our friction plate with our clutch aligning tool in it. The aligning tool goes in the center. Alright, that's going to sit there. You can see there's a little bit of movement in it. Alright, you need to, when you're doing your, actually it usually sits pretty snug, but isn't the best. Oh, this is actually fucking pretty shit. Alright, well this is a fucking terrible kit. This clutch aligning tool just looks like it's just a universal one, so it should fit snug in the crank, and that's what lines you up, you know what I mean? So this is terrible. It's obviously going to make my life a bit more fucking challenging. Anyway, I'll make something work. Okay, so this is how it should sit. All right, nice and snug, doesn't move around. What I've done is I've just taped the end up with duct tape, so it's pretty close to being spot on. All right, so now I've got this in. The aligning tool should set the center, and it holds it all in place while you can get your pressure plate up. All right, so I'm going to grab the pressure plate and get that lined up. Just remember, we've got the dowels here and then our bolts. Okay, all these bolts need a Loctite, Loctite 243 as per the flywheel. And so now this is lined up. We can get that on, we can torque it down and then pull that out, and we're ready to put the gearbox back on. Okay, so let's get it done. Alrighty, it's all together. So I've pulled the pickup tool out, the aligning tool out, and you can see there it's aligned very well, center. All right. So this has got tension on it now, obviously, because I've bolted all this down. So it's all snugged up with the Loctite. I forgot to mention to clean the back side of the plate on the pressure plate. So I did that anyway. That's all sorted. Now we'll turn our attention to the concentric slave. Okay, so just crack that. That was easy. Line this out. They recommend putting Loctite on it when you finish. Fuck knows what that is, but that shouldn't be in the gearbox. And bell housing. Okay, so that's that arm disconnected. That was a 10mm, I think. 10mm socket. Not a 0-1 socket. Alright, this is a, I think I told you before, 12mm for these three. I might have to get an extension on there. Alright, so anyway, I'm going to undo these and then I'll show you pulling it off. Last one. Alrighty, and then this whole thing just slips out. Alright, we've got a new one to go in. Likewise, slips over the shaft. Line up the other side there. Get it through the back side of the bell housing. This has a little spot it needs to sit on. Okay, it's located. Alright. Get Loctite on there. Get it in the hole. Pretty straightforward. Just do the same with these 3 bolts. And then they're to be torqued down to 30 newtons, I believe it was. And then just the 10mm on the side there. They also recommend putting Loctite on. Alright, so I'm just going to do these up, and then we'll be right to fit it back into the car. Okay, there it is. It's all on, all torqued down, buttoned up, ready to go. So Now when we reinstall the gearbox, this spleen has to line up with the spleen in the friction plate, and that can be a bit of a pain. So what you can do is, if the car's in gear, you can turn the output shaft. See the flange moving around? You can turn that to turn this. Alrighty, so that way you can line this up with the spleens as you slide it in. It sounds simple, just push it up, get it pretty well square, slide it into the spleen, and then you can rotate the gearbox to get the dowels to line up, all these dowels. It's not that simple because it's so heavy and cumbersome. So unfortunately, I can't set up the phone anywhere to be able to record it. As with everything else, there's sort of limited space under here, so I'll show you as much as I can. Alrighty, so with these clutches, there's a pretty involved bleeding process. So you bleed the clutch typically as per normal. You can hang on, I'll go back out. Alrighty, with everything back in, alright, everything's bolted back in, got our cross member off, all back in, we've got everything plugged back in, all our linkages are done, tail shaft's done. So we now need to bleed the clutch. Okay, so that's what this part here is. Alright, so there's a bit of fluid on the tip. I've already started trying to bleed it. It's a very involved process. There's a cap there, so I'll pop that off in a second. I'll show you the cap. Okay, so that's a pretty standard bleed port like you'd expect to see on brakes if you're familiar with brakes. Alright, so this is a 9mm. You can crack that and fluid will start to come out. So as per normal bleeding, you'll need someone in the car. What you want to do is you want to connect a hose here into a a jar. I'll throw in the jar out. I've still got the hose here, but so we've got a bit of hose. All right, ran that into, I just used a bottle, an old water bottle. I put a hole in the lid and put some fluid in the bottom of it and ran that hose so it sat in the fluid at all times. Okay, what happens is the hose fills up with fluid and you don't open and close this as per normal. You pump the clutch pedal, which the clutch pedal is going to want to fall to the floor, which I'll show you in a couple of secs. All right, so you pump the clutch pedal in and out by hand, and then once you've got all the air out of the line, then you need to nip this up, which I have. All right, put your cap back on, and then we'll go back up into the car and I'll show you what happens up there. Righto, so in the car here we've got our clutch, and if we push the clutch, you'll see it drops down and it doesn't come back. All right, before it was dropping all the way to the back of the floor. You can actually see the marks it was leaving. All right, and it was fairly violent. Now basically all you have to do is just come in here by hand, pull it all the way forward, push it all the way back, okay, and you'll see it's getting better and better every time. All right, and we'll get to the point, I mean, when you start doing it and you touch the clutch, it's sitting here and you touch it and it goes bang against the floor, you go, oh no, I've done something wrong. Well, no, you haven't necessarily done something wrong. It's just the nature of the beast with this type of clutch, and you just have to keep on pumping it. All right, but make sure that your reservoir is still full because obviously when you're pumping it, you're moving fluid around, and you can see now it's nowhere near as far as what it was only a few pumps ago. All right, so just keep on pumping. It sounds stupid, it pretty much is, but keep on pumping and it'll eventually get there. All right, so by this point you can pretty much sit in the car and push it with your foot now and use your toes to pull it back. I'm just going to keep on going by hand for a bit. now we're starting to get good pedal feel. At the start, there's no resistance at all, and look, now it's coming back by itself. All right, so there's still more to do. I'm just going to check the reservoir. All right, so that's pretty much down to the right mark there now, which is good. So we're not going to need to top that up again, I don't think. So we'll just keep on pumping. Here we go. It's coming back by itself. All right, that little bit of slack there, I'm going to keep on pumping to get rid of that bit of slack, because it should be tension all the way through. All right. Alrighty, we're pretty much there. So now this is a pretty big job, replacing a clutch. This is a really heavy gearbox. I was surprised at just how heavy it was. It made it really difficult to try and manage myself. In the past, I've just sort of swung it on my chest and been able to roll out from underneath the car, but yeah, this one's not that simple, unfortunately. So you know, by all means, give it a go. There's probably going to be a lot of profanities, trust me. So, but it's not impossible to do by yourself. I did get my daughter and her boyfriend to give me a hand at the last bit, just trying to get it up in the right angle and locate it. But they were just basically outside the car, moving jacks around just so I didn't die. But anyway, that's the long and the short of it. Clutch is in, it's all bled up now, and we're going to go for a test drive. Alrighty, we're getting ready to start it for the first time. Alright, now clutch is feeling okay. It's coming back all the way. There's a little bit of hesitation at the end, so it's still bleeding itself up a little bit, but you can see now it's really sort of coming back. Alright, so obviously the car won't start if you don't have your foot on the clutch, but you want to make sure that you're in neutral, all right, before you try and start it, because if you have done something wrong, then you don't want the car to be in gear and launch. So it's yeah. All right, so now I've got my foot on the clutch, I can put it into gear, we're not moving anywhere. All right, so we'll just see. All right, you can see it biting down there, going in reverse. All right, I've still got the handbrake on. So now we're good to move off. All right, and let's see how it goes on the road. No slipping. Good smooth gear change. I did go from first to third. We're running a suburban street, so I don't want to go too fast. But yeah, it's still what it needs to do. Wasn't slipping in the shed, which is good. So job done. If you want to check out some more videos, please be my guest, and like and subscribe if you can. That'd be appreciated.